Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the DC Discourse. We're happy to have you guys here again. I'm Dallin Coulter.
And I'm Nathan Peterson. We're happy to have you here. So Dallin, what are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about the greatest villain of all time.
And
who is
that?
the Joker.
I think there's a movie coming out about that, or that just came out, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Way good. I'm not going to suggest to go see it or not, you do you. But I saw it and it was way good, loved it. I texted Nathan like the next day and I was like, dude, you gotta go see this. I'm gonna go see it again when really solid. Joaquin Phoenix did a phenomenal job. We'll talk about the movie part later on.
Yep, and no spoilers though.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
So right now we're just gonna get into a little bit more about the history of the Joker.
Yeah. So we're gonna start off talking about kind of when he first appeared in comics. So he appeared in comics in 1940 in Batman #1, and he was created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane and Jerry Robinson.
Yep, and something interesting about this is they all kind of claim different stories about who created him, which I think is funny because Joker's such a mysterious character, and they all kind of claim him and want him to be their like brainchild, but
Right.
we really don't know who it is.
So all three of them combined pretty much put them together. We'll just go with that. So we kind of talk about the elements of that first story. Something that was really interesting is that Bill Finger wanted the Joker to be killed in the next issue, in Batman #2. But editorial didn't want him to be killed off. Bill Finger wanted him to because he thought that if Batman were to have reoccurring villains, then it'd make him look inept. But yeah, editorial said, no, we want to keep the Joker coming back. So they kept him in, and he was in, I think, like 11 of the 13 issues, something like that. And now he's one of the greatest villains of all time.
Yeah.
It was really smart of them to keep it in. That editor knew exactly what he was doing.
Yep. So basically he started out in 1940, and then he's always been a very dark character. We're going to get into a little bit more of his origin later, or origins, I should say. But what happened is in the 1940s it came out, and he was always really focused on basically homicides and very dark elements, especially for the 40s. So when the 50s came around, there was something that was called the Comics Code Authority. This was basically a censorship because they realized that comics had no rating system, and so they needed to start making them. They went way too far right though, and they basically made it so you couldn't have any violence, anything. So the Joker got way torn back for the 50s, and I think it was in the 70s they kind of realized, okay, wait, we can put a little bit more of this in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in the 70s is when they made him a bit more darker and more kind of a maniacal threat, and it's just been that way ever since.
Yep.
So Nathan, do you want to tell us a little bit about some of his origins, even though there's no like one official origin because the Joker's just, he's a madman and no one really knows his true origin stories, but there's some that have been written.
Yes, so there have been several that I've written because some writers say, hey, we want him to have an origin. Others are like, no, we really should keep him as a mystery. And so the most accepted origin, if he were to have one, is that he was a comedian, and he was a sane comedian, and he wasn't very funny. And he was basically trying to put dinner on the table for his family, and then he finally decided, you know what, I need to get into crime. And so he works with the Red Hood gang, and they tell him, hey, we're going to go to a bank, we're going to give you the title of wearing the Red Hood mask, and you're going to be like the leader of this little group. And what happens is the day of the crime, his wife actually dies, so he's like, I don't need to do this anymore, but the gang convinces him to do it anyways. And so he goes in, he wears the mask of the Red Hood, and turns out the gang was actually just kind of pulling one on him because they wanted a fall guy for the group. So when the cops came, when Batman came, they all got away, and they basically said, hey, he's the leader of the group, he's the one in the mask, take him. And Batman comes in, obviously that happens, and then depending on the story, sometimes he falls in a vat of acid, or he falls in he like swims away in some water that had some acid in it. Basically he got in some acid, and his face got burned off.
Didn't do acid, just got in some acid.
Just fell in some acid in some way. So that's one of the origins that's most accepted. Again, there are tons of other origins. I don't want to go into them too much just because it gets really confusing and convoluted. The question I have for you, do you like this origin? Do you like that he has an origin? What's your opinion on the matter?
Out of all the origins, I like that one the most, but I love the idea that we don't know his true origin, because that just goes along with the whole thing that the Joker's just chaotic. He doesn't have like a set goal in mind. He just kind of does whatever. He's very random, and so I love that there's like all these different origin stories because it makes you sit there wondering
Which one's
which
real?
one is real,
Uh-huh.
or are none of them real at all, and it just keeps it really fascinating and just like wanted to learn more about him, and
Yeah.
it's just really cool to see that his stories never match up, so it just plays along more with his character as a Joker and as a crazy dude.
Yeah, and they definitely do a lot with it, with The Killing Joke, which is one of the best stories ever written about the Joker, and then with another one about his origins. He's working with, there's basically 3 insane people, and he tells a different origin to each of them about his origin. And then in many of the comics, he'll say, as far as I'm concerned, my origin is a multiple choice question.
Yeah.
And so no one really knows what it is, and I love that because it adds to the whole mystery of the Joker, and it's great. So let's talk a little bit more. Before we get into some of his moments in comics, I want to talk to you. What do you think makes him such a great villain? Why is he so iconic?
I did a lot of like looking into this and watching different videos and kind of reading comics and coming up with my own ideas. Because if you go and talk to like anyone on the street, doesn't matter if they've like read comics a lot or even if they know what comics are, but if you be like, who's one of the greatest like comic book villains or Batman villains, everyone's gonna know who the Joker is. Like, it's no question. And you think, why does everyone know who he is? And I think that people just know who he is because of his influence and just like the game he plays with Batman, like constantly throughout all the years. What makes him really, really interesting, though, I think, is that he has no superpowers like Batman. And like I never really thought about it before until like I kind of came across something that mentioned that. And I was like, well, you got these 2 like very popular characters in pop culture, and they're like, you know, the hero and the villain, and neither of them have these superpowers.
Yeah.
Granted, Batman knows 123 different kinds of martial
Which could
arts,
be
which
considered a...
could be a superpower because I don't think that's humanly possible. But I mean, yeah, and the Joker just, I mean, you don't want to say it's a superpower to not feel pain.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool that neither of them have superpowers. What's also interesting about the Joker, and that makes him like very frightening in my opinion, is that he just doesn't care about anyone, anything, like not even himself, and he's not afraid to cross any type of line to just do chaotic things.
Yeah, he's interesting because most of the villains that I relate to are the villains that have a motive, and you listen to them and you're like, you know, I can understand what they're like. With Ra's al Ghul, he's like, the world's a messed up place, I want to blow it up. I mean, the world's a pretty messed up place, so I get that.
I get that.
The Joker's literally just wants to cause chaos.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes him so interesting, is that he really doesn't have any motives, except for basically playing with Batman, and they're kind of meant to go at it forever. So that's one of the coolest things about his character that I really like.
Right. In the words of Michael Caine, I'm going to butcher his accent, but he's like, some men just want to watch the world burn. Master Bruce.
That's his Michael Caine. Michael Caine.
That's the first time I ever tried that. So.
But yeah, so he's really just kind of an insane person. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about now is his influence in some of the biggest Batman events in comics. So we're not talking about some of our favorite stories yet. What we're going to go through are some of the most important things that he's done with the Bat family. I'll start off, and I'm going to let him explain a little more about this too, is in 1988 with the story called A Death in the Family. Now, before we get on with this, we asked this question on Instagram if someone could figure out which Robin it was that the Joker killed. And at the Poor Dad, I told him I'd give him a shout out because he was the first one to comment and get it right. So,
and then I also said we'd give Logan Peterson, or at Logan Fiction and Fitness, a shout out because he commented. We thought he would be the first one to comment, and he just wanted to give other people a chance. So shout out to both at the Poor Dad and Logan.
Yep. So there, we want to give him a shout out for this. Now, what we're talking about with this story is when Jason Todd gets murdered by the Joker. The Joker has a theory that Batman is his weakest moments, and his weaknesses are his family and his ties to relationships. So he wants to basically screw over Batman by killing the little birds, he calls them. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very gruesome scene of him taking a crowbar and violently murdering Jason Todd, which has a huge effect on comics because later Jason Todd comes back from the dead and becomes kind of an anti-hero, and so it changes his complete story arc.
Yeah. And I think it's just one of those stories that just shows how crazy the Joker is and how he doesn't care about any line and that he's willing to cross anything. Because what's cool is that, because I just read over A Death in the Family this week, and the whole before Jason Todd dies is that he finds out that his real mother is still alive, and so he goes on this kind of hunt to find his real mother, and Bruce helps him out, but Bruce is also trying to like follow where the Joker's going, and they end up in Ethiopia, where they find like the third woman that they're looking for, because it was one of 3 women that they thought, and they finally find the last woman and find out that it is Jason Todd's mother. And they do a little bit of catch up, but then the Joker has plans with Jason's mom to just steal some medical supplies. And when Jason Todd follows them and goes into a warehouse, like Nathan said, he gets beat by a crowbar. What I didn't know that I read while reading over this is that he doesn't die from the crowbar. He's like on the last thread though, and he tries to save his mom and get her out of the warehouse, but he's just like crawling along. But then a bomb that the Joker left goes off and ends up killing both of them with that. But it was way sad, like reading it, because Batman finds Jason's mom and she's still just barely alive, and she's just whispering, "I don't deserve Jason. He was such a good boy. I didn't deserve him. He didn't deserve to die." And then Batman finds Jason Todd in the rubble, and he's like, even though I know I shouldn't look for a pulse, or even though I know there's no pulse, I still check for one, just because he has that hope. And then he knows he's dead, and it just shows flashbacks in his mind of when he met Jason, and then he's just like carrying him out of the rubble, and it's just like super sad to see Batman carrying the dead Robin.
Yeah, and Batman considered this his biggest failure too. So the fact that Joker was able to accomplish this shows how powerful he is. Another huge moment happens in The Killing Joke, which shocked all fans. This has something to do with Batgirl. So Batgirl at the time is obviously Barbara Gordon, and she had been Batgirl for I think she started in 1942 or something like that.
Yeah,
so around like 40 years, and then.
And this is Commissioner Gordon's daughter.
Yeah,
for those
sorry.
of you who don't know.
So it was really close to the family of Commissioner Gordon too. And the Joker in Killing Joke basically has an idea that everyone is one bad day away from becoming like the Joker and becoming insane. So he wants to make Commissioner Gordon become insane. So he tortures Commissioner Gordon, but the first thing he does to torture him, he knocks on their door, Barbara opens the door, and he shoots her and causes causes a spinal injury, and she becomes handicapped. And she was handicapped for about 20 years in comics. As Oracle, which is basically she was in kind of the woman in the chair taking care of everything and always behind the scenes. So it was another way to change a character's history for a long time, because the Joker really affected the Bat family.
Yeah. Just another example that he's not afraid to cross any line and just wants to bring people to their last moment of goodness and just make them cross a line.
Yeah.
And he almost did that with Commissioner Gordon, then Batman helped talk some sense into him.
And something I want to go back to with A Death in the Family that I forgot to mention, I think is really interesting, is, okay, let's take for a moment that the Joker really was started by the Red Hood gang, okay?
Okay.
So who created him? Batman. Because he fell into the vat because Batman pushed him, or he fell, or whatever it was. He probably didn't push him, but he probably fell. And then he becomes the Joker because of that. So what does the Joker do? Joker then, years later, happens to kill Jason Todd, who then takes on the mantle as Red Hood. So it's this full cycle that I think is a really interesting thing. As I was reviewing this and studying for this, I was realizing how cool that cycle is, that the writers were kind of like, well, he created Red Hood, let's make it come back to that. And whether or not you accept that the Joker was the Red Hood or not, I personally think I like it being a mystery, but either way, it's still an interesting thing that they did as writers.
Yeah. Something, also I just thought of this, going back to A Death in the Family, is that I'm like 98% sure that this is why I remember reading it somewhere, but like Dick Grayson, Nightwing, was so upset about Jason's death that he did end up killing the Joker, but Batman didn't want anyone in his family to cross that line, so he revived the Joker somehow, and so that Dick wouldn't become a murderer. And so I'm gonna have to double check and make sure that actually happened, but that's what I read, and I thought that was really interesting.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Because it drove Dick to that line.
We're going to get into a conversation here before we move on that I think is a really interesting one. We know that the Joker is insane, and that Batman will never cross the line to kill him. Do you think somebody should kill the Joker, or do you think Batman should let somebody kill him, or not?
I don't know. It's such a moral and ethical issue that I don't know what to say, honestly.
Because when Jason Todd comes back from the dead, his biggest thing was, I forgive you for letting me die, but what I can't forgive you, Bruce, is that you wouldn't kill him after he did it.
Right.
And then again with Barbara Gordon, even Commissioner Gordon won't do it. So there's somehow this moral line that they won't cross, and I get that, but they've got connections. They could find a way to get the Joker
I'm sure
to
it
die.
could easily happen. I mean, Dick did it, apparently,
Yeah, so-
but Batman just doesn't want anyone to cross that line. So it's just really interesting. I mean, as far as like comic book wise and story wise, I don't want Joker to die because he's still such a
obviously.
great character. But also, I wouldn't want the Joker to die because I wouldn't want to see what that does to Batman. Like, I wouldn't want to see, because Batman's, his whole deal is to like fight crime, and he doesn't want people to kill each other because he witnessed his own parents' murder.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone were to kill like his greatest enemy, like what would that do
Yeah.
to Batman?
That would be a very interesting thing. So I think I wanted to mention about the Joker. We talked about legacy characters last week. Do you think the Joker has legacy characters, legacy villains that have kind of followed in his footsteps, or people that have made characters based off of the Joker?
I mean, absolutely Harley Quinn.
Yes.
I mean, and that's a weird relationship
Yeah.
because she loves him, and you don't know what's going through the Joker's mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I think her for sure. Do you have anyone else in mind?
I was just thinking, I know there's a Flash villain called the Trickster. He's not a great villain, but he's there.
Okay.
Also, the Riddler is a
Right.
copy of the
I was
Joker.
gonna say that too, yeah.
He's smarter than the Joker is. One thing off of that I think is interesting too is people don't realize how smart the Joker is. I would still consider he has a genius level intellect. He just happens to be insane too.
Mhm.
So he is smart. He's also an excellent chemist, which people seem to forget, just because he always puts the grins on people's faces by
With
the
his
toxin.
Joker laughing gas.
Yeah, and so that's another thing that he has. But again, there's a lot of characters that are influenced by him. Most villains don't trust him because no one really knows what he's gonna do at any moment. Even he doesn't really know. So
Right. I mean, and going back to why he's like the greatest villain, I think is that other villains are absolutely terrified of him.
Mhm.
Like there's moments where Joker will just walk in the room and people are just like absolutely frightened of what he's gonna do because he's just so, you can't read him, you don't know what he's
Yeah.
gonna do. So if you can make other villains like quake in their shoes, that's just on a whole nother level.
yeah, it's terrifying. So moving on to our next topic that I kind of want to spend a little bit of time on. What are some of your favorite depictions in comics? Your favorite comic stories of him?
So we already talked about A Death in the Family, that's
Mhm.
on there. And then A Killing Joke for sure. But then there's two others that I kind of like put next to each other. There's just like one comic book storyline that goes in between
Yeah.
them. So one is Death of the Family,
Mm-hmm.
which you can go on, there's a YouTuber called Comic Storian, and he
Mhm.
kind of like reads comics to you, like in his own voice with music. It's really cool. And so he does a great job with like Death of the Family, and just it shows that the Joker goes for the ones that Bruce Wayne loves because he finds out everyone's identities, and so he goes after those people, and just does some horrific things to twist all their minds.
I'm gonna jump in really quick on
Yeah,
that too
yeah.
because that was one of mine too. So if you are looking to read that, it's in Batman Rebirth issues 13 through 17, and the writers of that are Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, and Jonathan Glapion is the artist. Just to throw in another fact about
Good
it.
enough. And so then the Joker just kind of like disappears after that series. Then there's Batman Eternal. Then after that is a series called Batman Endgame. And that's when, like after these two real years in our lifetime, but I don't know like comic storyline wise how many years it was. But the Joker's been gone for a while, and then all of a sudden the Justice League has like turned on Batman, and they're all like coming after him, and it's cool to read one of the versions where, or like one of the strips where Batman's like, he's already like gone up against Wonder Woman, Aquaman, the Flash, and he's like, okay, I'm prepared for if Cyborg comes after me, and I'm prepared, whoever the other one was, he's like, but please don't let him come after me. And you're like, I know who he's talking about. But then right then is when like Superman starts fighting Batman, and then you see Superman's face is all smiley and crazy, and Batman's just like, no, it can't be him. Like it can't be the Joker. Like he's been gone for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so it's the final kind of like a final battle between Bruce Wayne or Batman and the Joker, and it's crazy that you're able to see that the Joker turned the Justice League against Batman
Yeah.
with his toxins.
So he's an excellent chemist, as we can see. Did you have any other comments you want to mention?
No, those are all.
Okay, great. So I'll go into the Killing Joke a little bit more because I love it. So it's a really interesting idea. As I had mentioned earlier, basically he takes Jim Gordon and wants to turn him bad, so he tortures him and does all these terrible things. It's a very graphic comic, so just throwing that out there. There's some nudity of Jim Gordon, so it's pretty graphic of the way he tortures him. But anyways, basically at the end, Jim says, "You're never gonna get me." And the last moment is so cool in the comic because it's called the Killer Joke. And the whole idea behind this is Batman is basically realizing that in the end, Joker or Batman is going to die, so he's trying to have a conversation with Joker. And the last minute when they're having a conversation, while he tries to have a conversation, the Joker's like, "I've got a joke for you." And he tells him a joke, and then you just kind of see Batman and Joker just kind of laugh together. And it's just this really creepy moment of them just laughing together for a sec, and the comic book ends. So no one knows what happens at the end there, so it's kind of left to this ambiguity of them kind of realizing that they're just going to keep going at it forever until one of them kind of just comes to a standstill. So I love that ending. Death of the family, again, very dark. Joker has his face cut off and then cuts off the faces of other people or makes it seem that way. So that's
And it's
another.
very like graphic, as you can
Yeah.
like see the muscles, like his face muscles, and he wraps a band around his head to keep his skin face like as a mask. It's really,
It's messed up.
it's creepy. So it's graphic, but it's a good read.
The last one I was going to mention is called The Man Who Laughs. I can't remember, there's a couple different versions of this, but the newest one came out, I believe, in 2003. I'll have to check that. But it came out, and the story's pretty standard. It's actually just at the beginning of Batman's career, and this is like the Joker's it's like a first appearance of the Joker. And the reason why I like it is, again, it just shows how dark he is. The art in it is really cool. There's the art at the beginning, you see most of the time with the laughing gas, they try to make it look kind of fun. But in a lot of the darker comics, they show what it would do to a face. And in this one, you just see like they're in an alleyway, and you see tons of bodies just kind of like laying there with like the melted faces from the laughing gas and the toxin. So it's really, really dark, but it's a really good story to kind of see what the Joker's about. So aside from that, best depictions in other media. We said we'd pick two of them, I believe. So
And we kind of discussed this with each other because
we didn't want to pick.
we didn't want to kind of pick the same things, so that we could both take different ones. So I'll start off, and I want to talk about Mark Hamill. Most people know him as Luke Skywalker, but he also does a lot of the voice animation for the Joker for years in like a lot of the animated shows and movies. But he also does the voice in the Arkham games, which like I think have this crazy good depiction of the Joker. And if you want to be creeped out a little bit, just go YouTube like Mark Hamill Joker laugh, and it just kind of shows like the video of the Joker and then Mark Hamill doing the recording, and it's just so weird like watching him do like the actual laugh, and it's just really creepy. But Mark Hamill does like such a solid job talking, like doing the voice of the Joker.
Mm-hmm. So who was the other one? I'll let you go.
So my other one, I was kind of decided between two. Nathan wanted to take one of them, and I was like, okay, I'll take the other. Is, like I mentioned earlier, Joaquin Phoenix just played the Joker in the movie that just came out. And I wanted to talk about him because his depiction is so scary and uncomfortable. And that's, when you're reading comics about the Joker, you just kind of feel uncomfortable while you're reading it, and you just don't understand like what his character is doing. And Joaquin Phoenix does such a great job of portraying that, and just portraying insanity and descent into that sanity as well. And in the movie, he just has this, like Joaquin Phoenix did a great job kind of researching how to do like his Joker laugh, but it's just like this pathological laughter where he just laughs even if he's feeling a different emotion. And he does it throughout the movie, and it's just really good. The movie doesn't really show like the whole smarts of the Joker, but it's because it's like an interpretation of an origin story. So I'm sure if Joaquin Phoenix did like multiple movies, it'd show like his
How
thinking, and like
intelligent he is,
it'd show how intelligent he is, and that it could be someone who could go against the Batman. But it's a cool like version of an origin story. So Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. There's a lot more I want to say, but it'd definitely kind of be
Spoiler.
spoilers.
All right, so I'm gonna do the classic one, which everyone knows I'm gonna say because
Yep.
he's the one that made the Joker so famous in outside of the comic book world, but made him so popular in just pop culture, and that is Heath Ledger. So
Say what? What?
He's the reason why people were so scared about the new one because they're
That's
like
true.
everyone when they found out Joaquin Phoenix was doing it, they're like, oh, you can't do that. How are you gonna?
I've been
Same thing with
taught
Jared
that.
Leto when he did it. Everyone just freaked
Right.
out, and it's like, well. At some point, it's comics, they're going to put new actors in. Heath Ledger was amazing, but it has been 11 years.
Mhm.
Great job, but he's amazing. He
And I will say, when I was watching Joker, Joaquin Phoenix, like I didn't even think about Heath Ledger at all, and it's not in a bad way. It's just that there were different portrayals
Interpretations.
and interpretations of the character.
Yeah, so I think that's really cool that they were able to do that. I was looking into my other one, and I found out there's 2 voice actors that do it, and it is, you've got, let me just check again, so you've got Mark Hamill, who does the voice, and then the last one, I think his name was Pierre Hetet, and they do the voice of the Joker in Batman the Animated Series, and we mentioned this a lot in Batman the Animated Series, just how popular it is. Again, it gives the Joker a very good. In that one, he's very much the clown prince of crime,
That's true.
which I like because he's not as dark. It's a kid's show, but you just get to see how like kind of goofy he is and how over the top he is with everything, and you kind of see some of the fun aspects of the character rather than the really dark stuff. So
Yeah.
I like that because I know the darkness of the Joker is a little bit too much for me. But so those are some of the things that I like about him. So I would say Heath Ledger, and then Mark Hamill is. The fact that he's just done it for so long is
Yeah.
really cool too. There's actually a really quick thing that I wanted to show really too interesting. In the CW Flash, I can't remember what season it was when they introduced him. They introduced a character called the Trickster, who I mentioned earlier is kind of a copy of the Joker, and they gave Mark Hamill the role as the Joker,
Really?
as the Trickster, which I
Huh,
thought was an
that's cool. I
interesting
didn't
way
know
of
that.
kind of pulling him into the show and
Yeah.
giving him a chance to be an actor for maybe not the Joker, but it was a good interpretation of what he probably would have done with it. So
Yeah.
it was cool.
And one thing I just thought about when you're talking about Heath Ledger is that one cool thing that they do with Heath Ledger's Joker in the movie is that, like we said, there's a lot of origin stories for Joker
Yes.
that you don't know it's real.
Mhm.
And throughout the movie and The Dark
play on
Knight,
that.
when they play on it when he just keeps asking people like, "You want to know how I got these scars?" And he just tells a different story each time. So it's a
Yeah.
cool little shout out to the comics just being like, no one really knows his origin story.
Yeah, so that is what we have on the Joker. We would love for you guys to go check out some more stuff. But yeah, that's all we've got for now. So
If you have any questions about the Joker or any thoughts on what things we've said, feel free to comment.
Also, we need your help. Spread the news.
Yes.
Get this video out there. If you watched it, get people to watch it too, because everyone wants to know more about the Joker and Superman and Batman and the legacy characters, and we've got plenty more for you.
Yeah.
So share this video with someone and get the news about the DC discourse out there.
Yep.
And follow us as well. Where
Sure.
can they follow us now?
At the DC Discourse on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube.
Yep. So press that subscribe button, and until next time, we are going to.
Boom tube out of here.